CityCast Portland's 503-Day Block Party is almost here. It's happening on Saturday, May 3rd in downtown Portland's Ankeny Alley and Southwest 3rd Ave. The party is starting at 1 p.m. and will have swag bags for the first 100 people filled with freebies from our amazing sponsors. And you can now enter to join the Portland Icons Costume Contest. That's where you dress up as the most iconic Portland person, place, or thing, and you get a chance at winning prizes and our collective admiration. If singing is more your thing, we'll have live band karaoke, which is open to all, but we did book some special guests. Also, we're making all of this official. City leaders are joining us at 5:03 p.m. with an official 503-Day proclamation, so you'll get to witness 503-Day becoming a totally real holiday, all while sipping on a local Oregon brew in front of the outdoor beer garden. Best of all, it's totally free. Sign up for the costume contest and find more information at our website, portland.citycast.fm. That's portland.citycast.fm.
Portland is facing a serious housing crisis. But at the same time, over 30% of the office space in the central business district sat vacant at the end of 2024. Now, a lot of people are eyeing all those empty buildings for conversion into housing, but it turns out it's not that easy. Today on CityCast Portland, Sarah Edwards of the Portland Business Journal is talking to us about two big commercial to residential renovation projects that are getting underway downtown and what they can tell us about the future of our city's housing crunch. It's Monday, April 21st. I'm executive producer John Notarianni in for Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. So we've talked a lot about housing on this show over the last few months and few years, and we know that there is a housing crisis in Portland, right? And I think it's pretty logical to be like, okay, we've got a bunch of empty office buildings downtown. Why don't we turn those into apartment buildings? It seems like a no-brainer. But you've been reporting on this. What does downtown's office building vacancy look like right now?
Yeah, so in the last couple of months, we've had a lot of tenants either commit to downtown or affirm that they're going to stay in downtown. But we do still have some vacancy that is looking to be filled. For the end of last year, Q4 2024, the direct vacancy rate was somewhere just around 30%. And it's kind of held steady the last couple of quarters.
That sounds like a lot of empty office buildings.
Yeah, a lot of empty space that could be reused.
Okay, so 30%, 1 in every 3 offices downtown does not have people doing office work in it. Could all of those become apartments? Do we have a sense of how many are capable of being converted even?
Yeah, we don't have an exact number of how many can be converted. There was a study from Commercial Edge that I actually found. Mm-hmm. The study broke down the feasibility in 3 different tiers. So tier 1 is the most feasible, easier conversion. The second tier is, there would need to be some extra work, but about 65% of the tier 1 space in that 30% is in the central business district. So there is potential.
Why isn't that just happening already? Why is this more complicated than we think it is? Because obviously it's a lot more complicated than just, throwing a mini fridge and calling it an apartment, right?
If only it were that easy, right? A lot of the biggest issues are just, cost really is the biggest one. A lot of downtown buildings don't have seismic retrofitting. A lot of them are older and they just need a lot of work done to them. And, an office building isn't always built for 24/7 use. So cost and building age really are some of the biggest challenges. Mm-hmm. I remember talking with an analyst with CBRE who, said that it's easier for these smaller office buildings to convert just because they're a little less work intensive. It'd be the bigger ones where it's okay, we really need to evaluate, is the cost even going to be worth it to pursue that kind of conversion?
We talked with an expert on this show about this idea maybe a year or two ago. And the big thing that came up was bathrooms. Yeah. There's not enough bathrooms in an office building. You think it's just put up some drywall and give everyone the keys. It's no, there's not pipes for 100 toilets in an office building.
Most floors have 1 bathroom for the entire floor. So you suddenly have to create 4 more for each individual unit. Because I don't know how people would feel about a community bathroom.
Yeah. In your luxury downtown loft. I mean, just call it a loft, right? Just be like 2,000 square feet.
Exactly. Floor to ceiling windows. There you go.
Yeah. And, just community-centered bathrooms. That'd be great. Yeah. Well, Sarah, you've been doing some reporting on this, obviously. And it sounds like there are 2 buildings in Portland that are really starting to get into this process. The Oregon Casket Building on Northwest 5th, the Falcon Building on Northwest Gleason. And your reporting, you say they would offer about 93 units altogether.
Yeah.
I got to say, I don't know the Casket Building off the top of my head. That's not one that's at the top of my list of Portland icons. What are these 2 buildings like?
So I will confirm, we had this discussion in my newsroom of what went down at the Casket Building.
Yeah.
It used to be a workshop and showroom that built caskets, from what I've discovered. So,
and do you really want to live at the Casket Building? Is that
no dead bodies allegedly have gone in and out of this building. It's mostly for showroom, mostly for shopping for said casket. Okay. So I don't think you have to worry about the building being haunted.
Okay, good. Yeah.
But
that's step 1 of any residential conversion.
Exactly. But the Halloween folks, they'd have a place to live. They'd go crazy for that if that was the case. So, depends on how you market it.
Yeah. But it sounds like these are like smaller office buildings that are empty now. Like, what's going on with them?
Yeah. So at least the Casket Building has been vacant for quite some time. And the reason that this one is feasible is because it operated as a workshop and showroom. So for the most part, the building is a shell. There's not a ton of internal demolition that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. The whole building is about 25,000 square feet. That one is looking to add 34 units of housing and some space for retail. It's a smaller building. I believe it needs some seismic retrofitting. I can't quite remember. But like we said, it's a little easier to do seismic retrofitting for smaller buildings just because the size. Mm-hmm. Late last year, they even got a $7 million loan from Prosper Portland. So the project is beginning to move forward.
Okay, so Casket Building is a go.
Mm-hmm.
Falcon Building, again, better name.
Better name for sure.
What's going on there?
The owner was not quite ready to talk about it yet, but it sounds like the project is moving forward. We're going to check back in a couple of weeks. That's a little bit of a bigger project. That one's hoping to bring in 59 units. That one's bigger. It's another 85,000 square feet. Both of these projects are in Old Town. And I believe the Falcon Building is actually still housing tenants. That plan isn't quite as built out as Casket. But they did also receive a Prosper Portland grant for $4.35 million. So that's another one that's a little earlier in the process, but it is still moving through.
Mm-hmm. And who's leading these projects? Like, who's at the helm?
Yeah, so I can't say for Falcon Building, but Design Research Office is at least the firm that's designing the Casket Building. Mm-hmm. And they said that they've been, working through the design process, getting ready to go to the city and get those approvals. So I believe that one's expected to start moving forward either later this year or early next year.
Okay, so getting moving.
Yeah.
But I understand, none of these conversions are happening at this point in Portland, right?
Right. I mean, so I've been at this job around 6 months, and my predecessor wrote not that long before I started and he left that there were no conversion projects happening in Portland. It was just not on the city's radar. I remember talking with developers and brokers who just said, yeah, it's a great idea, but it's just not feasible. At least for what our thinking of is like a high-rise office building. The cost is just not worth it.
Yeah. So what is the main challenge? Because again, it's like we have these office buildings. There's no one in them. We need apartments. The buildings are there. I mean, you mentioned cost.
Yeah.
What are the main challenges that's preventing us from going boop, boop, boop and having apartments? That's how easy it is, right? Yeah.
Right? All you do, like we said, just throw in a bed and a bathroom, mini fridge, you're set. A lot of it really does just come down to the cost. And you have to configure, how can we fit different styles of apartments in these buildings? And like we said, these buildings aren't built to be used 24/7. They're meant for, your 9 to 5 and then to be quiet in the evening. So a lot of the challenges really just come from cost. It's a lot easier to just go and buy an already filled apartment building rather than start from the ground up. So a lot of it really does come to cost.
Yeah, well, I want to know what it's actually going to take to make all these conversions happen. But first, let's take a quick break.
If you're a home DIYer like me, you might have a few leftover paint cans gathering dust in your basement. Or maybe your house already came with a bunch of them like mine did. So I'm happy to share that Paint Care makes recycling your leftover paint, stain, and varnish simple and easy with convenient drop-off locations as close as your local hardware store. Paint Care has 3 simple rules for painting smarter. 1, buy the right amount of paint for the job. 2, use up leftover paint. And 3, recycle the rest. If you visit paintcare.org/3 simple rules, you'll find tips on how to do all 3. Buying the right amount of paint for your project, exploring DIY ideas for how to use up leftover paint, and also just look up the nearest drop-off site in your neighborhood. Paint Care is all about keeping it simple for Oregonians.
So here's a tip. The number one thing that your mom probably wants is a phone call from you. So this Mother's Day, you can give her a phone call, of course, and give her an Aura digital picture frame. So my mom lives across the country, and a big way that we keep in touch is through sharing photographs. I'm constantly sending her photos of activities that I'm doing, like my team at the Lads 500 bike relay the other week. Yeah, she got those photos. Aura Frames was named the best digital photo frame by Wirecutter. So you can use one to keep in touch with your mom too, right from your phone. Aura has a great deal going for Mother's Day. For a limited time, CityCast listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off plus free shipping on their best-selling Carver mat frame. That's auraframes.com. Promo code CityCast. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply.
What sort of promises have you made to yourself this year? Getting in better shape, eating healthier, saving more money, traveling somewhere new? What about discovering a new culture by learning a new language? With Babbel, you can do that in just a few weeks. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I've been learning Spanish with Babbel. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in new languages, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations. The Spanish I learned on Babbel really helped me on a recent trip to Mexico City, ordering in restaurants, shopping at the textile market, cheering on at the Lucha Libre, and I've been keeping it up since I got home. You're a podcast listener. I know that because you're listening here. I bet you'll love Babbel's new podcasts. On Eavesdrop in Espanol, which I listen to, you get to listen to a real conversation, then have the teacher host explain back to you. Then you listen again and catch everything. And you can even read along in the transcript. It's a really fun and effective way to learn. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Is it easier to build something new than to convert a building? I'm just having a hard time taking that it's too expensive. It's come on, people need places to stay.
Right. A lot of it comes down to the seismic retrofitting. So one thing that this study I referenced talked about is the older the building, the more feasible the conversion is, which is great if you're in, the Midwest or the Northeast where their building codes are very different. I mean, I guess they don't really have earthquakes in the Midwest like we would here.
I'm from Michigan. Yeah, the earthquakes are not on the radar there.
Yeah. So a challenge that is here is a lot of building codes changed in 1980 to beef up seismic retrofitting. This is just what I've heard offhand.
Mm-hmm.
But just to seismically retrofit a building is a huge cost in itself. And a lot of these older buildings that would be great candidates for office to residential, they have not had that work done.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It really comes down to am I ready to eat this cost, go through the couple of years that this could take to change the building, or would it just be easier to start new?
Yeah. It's also interesting that, as a city and as a region, we've decided office buildings that have not been retrofitted, if they get hit with an earthquake, that'll be fine. But you know what I mean? It's just There's so many buildings that have not had that sort of treatment that are at risk right now.
Yeah, definitely.
I imagine that tariffs are not helping.
Yeah, I've had a lot of sources who have kind of, they're not quite ready to dive into that conversation, but it has offhandedly come of like, once steel prices go up, that's what you mostly need to properly retrofit a building.
Mhm.
So it's definitely creating some concern.
Yeah. Well, at least one of these projects sounds like it's underway. The other one sounds like it's kind of kicking around. Do we have any sense of like how long it would take? Like, Sarah, I want to know when I can move into the casket building, when I can get my creepy neighbors together. Like, how long is it going to take?
Yeah, I want to say the turnover is really not that long because, again, the building is already built. For the casket building, it's already vacant. It's been
Mhm.
emptied. They really just have to go in and, create the apartments. So I want to say, if I remember correctly, the turnover would probably be around a year, maybe 2 years.
Okay.
Once permitting goes through, you just go and retrofit and build out the casket building to apartments, and there you go.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing I'm thinking, like, okay, we're talking about 93 units and like every little bit helps. Obviously, we
Yeah.
need more housing. We need it to come from wherever we can. But how would these projects fit into like Portland's housing plan and like the needs that we have? Are these sorts of conversions going to make a dent at this point? Or are we really looking at like 93 in the face of how much we actually need?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those instances of like any housing coming down the pipeline is good. I mean, we wrote a story a couple of months ago that said we're about to deliver the lowest number of housing units since, I believe, the Great Recession. So the pipeline for new housing units is just really drying up. It's almost a toss-up of like anything getting off the ground is great, but we do definitely need to continue thinking of like, once these units are delivered, where do we go next? We can't just stop here.
Yeah.
I think for many, these are a test of like, can this conversion actually work? Is it actually going to be a worthy investment? And then we'll go from there. A lot of people are watching of like, let's see how this plays out. And then we can circle back.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are looking at this. And like you said earlier, like people have said in the past, residential conversion's a great idea, but like the numbers don't pencil out.
From the person I spoke with, the design research office, I mean, they seem pretty optimistic and very excited on this project. It sounds like they have high hopes for it. It sounds like things are going to work out. So I think it's one of those we wait and see and watch.
Yeah. Like let's say these projects come online. The casket building is Portland's hottest new apartment building, and like the developers are making millions of dollars. Like, are there other buildings downtown that are kind of like next in line for this type of conversion?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there are any that are specifically being eyed as conversion, but the study that I used from Commercial Edge did reference 3 buildings that, if the owners wanted to, they could feasibly convert from office to residential fairly smooth.
Uh-huh.
The largest building was the Power and Light building. That scored very well on the tier system used to determine feasibility. The Pittock Block building also, I mean, 250,000 square foot building. That's another one that the study deemed to be a pretty good option, along with the American Bank building. And, these are 3 all in downtown or at least nearby downtown.
Mhm.
So if the owners came down to it and wanted to, they could easily turn over.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Power and Light building though. I mean, and that guy looks big though.
All 3 of these are really big projects, so they'd be pretty costly to turn over, but a lot of them have undergone a lot of work, and just the way that the buildings were constructed, the turnover would not be as complicated as, say, some of the other buildings like one that I'm in.
Yeah. Well, like you said, this is sort of Portland's first stab at making this happen. Are there other cities in the country? Are there other places that we're seeing this really work?
Yeah, so funny enough, the city with the highest number of projects, at least planned, is actually in Cleveland.
Heck yeah, Cleveland. All right.
This was from a CBRE analysis back in 2023, so that very well could have changed. But Cleveland and just projects in the Northeast and Midwest, they have some of the highest volumes of these conversion projects right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it comes down to they just have an older stock of office buildings. So they have a lot more candidates that would fit this type of conversion than we do.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Like older is better because like the rooms are smaller, like it's made out of bricks and wood. Like why does that make a difference?
I believe it's because just they've withstood all this time.
Oh, they haven't fallen down yet. So we're like, yeah,
Haven't fallen down yet. Let's go.
Stick around for another 100 years. Yeah.
I believe the threshold is like buildings built before 1980 are great candidates. Because 1980, I believe I mentioned this, but 1980 is when a lot of building codes drastically changed.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have a little bit of a different picture to work with. Whereas before 1980, it's almost like more of a shell that you
Yeah.
get to work with.
Well, we've sort of been teasing around the idea of what needs to happen to get these projects off the ground and happening, and like hopefully the developers at least break even or make some money on them. And we have seen some like really high profile flops in Portland recently. I mean, the Ritz-Carlton we just saw is facing foreclosure within the last month.
Yeah.
So let's say the like cranky experts are right and these two projects don't go well and they end up losing money or don't get finished or whatever. And
Yeah.
what's the next move for downtown? If we have 30% empty office buildings, like, do we know?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know just to bring people back downtown, a lot of it is going to come from focusing on the conversion from the daytime economy to the nighttime economy. So getting people
Yeah.
to want to come downtown, not just for work, but just to come and go to the restaurants and coffee shops we have and find another way to encourage people to come for non-work related purposes.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But then we still have all these empty office buildings. I mean,
Yeah. So we've written a lot of stories over just the 6 months that I've been here of offices and companies who are, they're committed to downtown. They see the office vacancy. They watched as a lot of companies left downtown.
mhm.
And many have said that won't be us. We want to be the solution to revitalizing downtown. And we want to be downtown. Our workers want to be here.
Mhm.
So I think the more that we see those companies continue to stay, I think that's just going to help kind of change the narrative and bring some people back.
Yeah, well, something that we saw on the city website, that if people are interested in taking on one of these conversions, if developers are like trying to figure out what needs to happen. Did you see this? They said the city is offering 15-minute appointment slots to talk with a permit
Oh.
technician or a building code expert on their website to sort of talk through the ins and
Oh.
outs of commercial to residential conversions. So,
Oh, I did not see that, but that's really good to know. I know the city in 2023, they passed some ordinances to also just try and encourage the development. One of them is just, helping with the cost of these retrofits. It'll waive either $3 million of the retrofitting cost or the total cost of the retrofit, whichever one costs less.
mhm.
So there have been efforts by the city to try and encourage these conversions. But, that story was written in March 2023. The ordinances are still around. But as far as we know, no one stepped up to the plate until now.
It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is really cool. This is really exciting. I hope this happens. Would you move into the Casket building? Or are you a Falcon girl?
I would. My family loves ghost stories and anything haunting. So I think my parents would be disappointed if I didn't at least try or explore the building.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for hanging out and filling us in.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
That's all for us today here on CityCast Portland, but thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend or leave us a rating or a review? We'll be back tomorrow with a lot more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.